Welcome, everybody. I'm Jill Jonathan with Red Wine and Blue. I'm here with Joe Carducci, who always hosts with me, and then our special guest, Laura Rost. Rost. I hope I said that. I was like, I just asked you how to say that. Rost. And just so you know, Red Wine and Blue, we're a community of women who use digital media and friend to friend organizing to change the world one suburb at a time. And one way that we do that is through conversation. So Joe and I have all kinds of incredible conversations, and I am excited to say that this is our first conversation we've had about sustainability. We want to bring more sustainability to the suburbs. And I will be completely honest, I feel like I have lots of ways to improve in this area. And that's why we're incredibly excited to have Laura join us. She's from Bee City, USA. So welcome, Laura, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Pleased to be here.
So let's just get into it. What exactly is Bee City, USA anyway? What is that?
Bee City USA and Bee Campus USA are two initiatives of the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. We, as an organization, work on helping invertebrates of all kinds, from monarchs to fireflies to freshwater mussels. And my program focuses on certifications for cities and campuses like universities and colleges to basically give these communities tools for actions we know help pollinators. So we give them the basic commitments, what they have to meet, and then they get to make these programs their own. But it's all focused around creating habitat and reducing pesticide usage and educating the public about pollinator conservation.
I love it. I mean, it's bees are obviously central to our lives, right? Like, I mean, can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, so there are actually 3,600 species of bees in the US. Everyone always thinks about honeybees, but they're actually non-native. They were introduced from Europe and they're important to agriculture, but we have all these native bee species that are super important both to agriculture and all the foods we enjoy, like blueberries and tomatoes and peppers. But there's also all these wonderful ecosystem services these native bees provide. Some travel just a few yards or just under like a few hundred yards in their lifetime, and others can travel for a few miles to forage. So there's all different sort of relationships with different plants they have, and they're all just very important and special in their own ways.
And what is something that we can do? So the first thing that I heard somebody told me about this, and then I Googled it and I was like, I'd never heard about it, is No Mo May. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck is that? That's a thing? So let's just start there. What's that?
Sure. Yeah. So Nomo May is kind of a fun thing you can do to help bees a little bit in the spring. It's by no means going to save the bees, but it can be a fun activity to kind of just let your lawn get a little bit wild in the spring. Spring is a really important time of year for pollinators. They're freshly emerging, they're hungry, and nectar flower resources may be low that time of year. So lawns, if they're not treated with chemicals like weed and feed and whatnot, if they do have something besides grass in the lawn, they're not a monoculture. Like they might have like violets or yarrow or dandelions, dead nettle. There's all these pretty plants that may show up in your lawn. And if you don't treat them and you let your lawn get a little higher, you allow those flowers to bloom, and it's one more source of food for bees in the spring. But it's by no means it's not for everyone, and there's no pressure to participate, but it can be a fun way to kind of rethink about how you can make your own yard habitat for bees.
Yeah. What are some other things that we can do? I'm just curious because, like like Jill said, admittedly, I don't know enough or very much at all about this sort of thing. Like, it's the kind of thing where you think, is it intimidating? Like, because I really don't know what are things. Like, I'm sitting outside. I love being outside. Is it something I can put in a pot or, plant as an herb or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. There's something everyone can help pollinators. There's so much we can do. There's four basic things that Xerces promotes and that Bee City promotes. Four actions: plant native plants that bloom consistently throughout the growing season, and I'll give you some examples in a minute. You can protect nesting sites for native bees. Most bees are actually ground nesting and solitary nesting. So they just need like some bare soil, they need dead stems, old logs and branches. You can put those around the corners of your yard out of the way a little. But just letting things be a little more natural. Even leaf litter can be beneficial, not just to bees, but butterflies too, and other beneficial insects. But so it's native plants, nesting sites, and then the third thing is reducing or eliminating pesticide usage. It's super important that bees are protected and other invertebrates and beneficial creatures are protected from pesticides. Most people tend to over apply pesticides when they use it. So using pesticides as a very last resort is very important. And then the fourth thing we can all do is spread the word. We can talk to our elected officials about protecting pollinators and reducing some of the nastier pesticides that we use. We can talk to our neighbors about what we're trying and experimenting with in our yards and what flowers we recommend. And we can put up signage, just having a yard sign, educating the public about what you're doing can go a long way to make it seem friendly and approachable and invite the community to learn as you grow stuff. And, it's simple things like that. And we can really create little stepping stones of habitat, even in an urban environment where pollinators can travel and eat and breed and really thrive. And just little bits at a time, we can chip away. Even a container garden can do a lot.
I love that so much. And I will be honest, like I've always said I do not have a green thumb. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have a friend who's an avid gardener and she's just amazing. And she's like slowly helping me build my confidence and growing things. And so you said plant native plants, and that's something that I hadn't really heard about until probably in the last year. I mean, what exactly is a native plant and how do you figure out what is a native plant to where you live?
Yeah, so native plants are all around us. We may not even realize what's native and what's not, but there's great plant lists out there. My organization, the Xerces Society, has a brand new set of updated lists of recommended pollinator plants for every area of the country. If you just Google Pollinator Conservation Resource Center and Xerces, you can find those lists, or Xerces plant lists are fast ways to find it. But basically, the reason native plants are important is they co-adapted or co-evolved with our native bee species. So we know that that's quality nutrition for those bees. That's the stuff that they've grown up with. So it's an easy way that we know we can probably provide high quality food sources for our native bees. And the nice thing about native plants is once they're established, you really can have a brown thumb. They take care of themselves.
I like that.
You don't need to water very often. When they're first getting started, you may need to water consistently, but really a lot of it's just hands off. You just kind of let them be wild, go through the whole life cycle, let them go to seed, let those seed heads stay over the winter, both for this value of the stem, but also, it's a great way to introduce more birds into your yard. They love those seed heads. You'll see them sitting on top of them in the winter, just pecking away. So it's a great way to bring nature into your backyard. And as far as recommended plants go, there's a whole lot out there, but one of my favorites for the Midwest and the Great Lakes area is purple prairie clover. It's just a really beautiful plant. Also, there's some native goldenrods that are very easy to grow. They get mistaken for some bad plants, but there's some native ones that are beautiful, beneficial, and just really attractive. And then wild lupin is a nice choice, and blazing star. There's a lot of just beautifully named plants out there that have a variety of colors and sizes. So there's something for everyone.
Yeah, I'm curious. I was reading a statistic about the threat globally to our pollinators. And what I see here is that up to 40% of pollinator species on Earth are at risk of extinction in the coming years as a result of a variety of environmental stressors, including habitat loss, exposure to pesticides, diseases, pathogens, and climate change. Yeah. So like, it seems as though we obviously need to be cognizant of battling that, so we can all do our part. So it's more important now really than ever.
Yeah, definitely. And we oftentimes think of habitat destruction as, forests being cut down and houses going in, but really a monoculture grass only lawn is also a form of habitat destruction, frankly. So if we're able to reintroduce native plants into an urban or suburban landscape, we can really kind of have like a secret stash of great pollinator habitat all around us. And one of the other cool things about native plants is the more you plant native plants in your community, the more your community will look like your place. Indiana will look like Indiana, New York will look like New York. And so you get to kind of show off the beauty and the personality of your ecoregion. So there's all these nice little side benefits. And yes, it's a little wilder looking, but with time, people really adjust to seeing more wild plants and more plants getting to complete their full life cycle and hang out dead in the winter. You start getting used to it, and it can look intimidating at first, but if you just start small, you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to rip out your lawn immediately. You can shrink your lawn, grow your flower border. And a super easy way to participate too is planting some native trees. They're called pollinator meadows of the sky by some people, because one apple tree or one willow can have so many blossoms and can help so many bees. And it's a way that you can have some seasonal beauty without a lot of maintenance once it's in the ground and established. And so your yard can look still relatively normal and formal, but you can introduce, just like start switching out some of those nursery varietals for some native alternatives.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's like baby steps. And, like we're suburban women and I have an HOA. So we might not, it might be frowned upon if we just let our like grass grow wild, but I like that idea of like starting small. And so my question is, because like I said, I hadn't even really heard of native plants, native trees. Like, I don't know if this is finally becoming a little more mainstream, but what happened? Like, what happened to our yards where we don't have native plants in them? Like, where did it all go wrong?
Well, there's a lot of theories about it, so I can't say for sure, but I think part of it is this idea of wealth. Historically in Europe, you think of a castle with a grassy lawn around it, and that's like your defensible space. And so the idea of having like low plants and an open space where you can see out over it is like becomes a status symbol. So I think that may be part of it. And then I think there's just like I think as it became just a trend of like, we're like, if we look good, we are good, if we're tidy, like that proves that we're good people. And and there was like kind of a not wanting to stick out, maybe like nobody wants to stand out too much in their neighborhood. And so people kind of got into this mindset of we all need to look alike. But once you start seeing a community start choosing different lawn and yard maintenance choices, you really start to see like, oh, it's not so scary, it's not so intimidating. And I live outside of Portland, Oregon, and when I first moved to my neighborhood, it was almost all monoculture lawns, pretty basic. But over the last 5 years, I keep seeing more and more houses mulching over their lawns, doing the lasagna method of putting cardboard down and then bark chips on top and then planting native plants. And at first you're like, oh, that house looks different. But once you see multiple houses in a neighborhood do it, you think, oh, look at all these beautiful new flowers. You don't even think about the fact they don't have a lawn. You're focused on the sunflowers and the lupin and all the seasonal variety that you didn't have before. And that becomes the personality of your neighborhood.
I love that so much. I feel like that's something we could try to start in the suburbs, and I mean, suburbs are different everywhere. Like where I live, it's HOA, and it is very like a lot of the houses look very similar, the yards look similar. So I like that idea of just starting slow. Like I'm brainstorming and taking notes of what I can start to do.
And with HOAs, sometimes they tell you can't have native plant landscaping or rain gardens, but some states have actually passed laws saying HOAs are not allowed to restrict on certain types of habitat. Like Maryland, for example, has a new law that disallows HOAs from saying no native plant pollinator landscaping and no rain garden. So that is, even if it's in their bylaws, it is not enforceable. So it's important to know, what your rules and regulations are in your area, but it's also important to present alternatives to the people making those policies and asking them, hey, have you considered making these changes? We know bees are in decline and we have this wonderful solution. How about we allow people to have smaller lawns and larger, frames of like flower borders around the lawn, and maybe we allow leaves to stay on the ground more because that can be such good overwintering habitat. And present this as new information and an opportunity for improvement rather than a criticism of you're doing something wrong or bad. You build a lot more friends if you kind of move forward saying like, I've got new data and I want to share this awesome opportunity with our community, and reframe it as an opportunity to, make things more reflective of your own ecosystem, and bring in more birds and friendly bugs.
Sorry, what? I know this is going to sound very, I don't know, not educated. What's a rain garden? Like, I don't know if I'm curious. That sounds like awesome.
I know. I wrote it down. I don't know what it is either. I was going to Google it after this. So I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. I've been working for environmental nonprofits my whole career. So it's like, that's like all I know is, and like it rains so much in Oregon. Like this is just what we do. But rain gardens and bioswales can be ways of basically, they serve different functions, but one of the things you can do is basically disconnect your downspouts and feed them into a rain garden on your property. And it's a way that you can harvest that rainwater and also provide for your plants and potentially also filter that water in a slower manner so it doesn't immediately gush into your sewer system and overload pipes in the winter when you might have high rains. So it's a great tool, especially in a area with a lot of impervious surfaces. So if you have a lot of cement and asphalt, you may see like kind of like flash flooding sort of like when it rains, but having rain gardens and bioswales around, you can basically slow that water down and provide for nature while also preventing some flooding. And there's incentives sometimes. Some cities have like, they'll give you some pretty sweet incentives financially if you disconnect your downspouts and put in a rain garden. So it's something worth looking into.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that. And I love how you said, one of the fourth thing that you said was spread the word. And, at Red Wine and Blue, like we talk a lot about politics and policy and all of that. And so can you just give us an example of maybe something you've done or people that who have reached out to their legislatures or who have tried to change policy or bring awareness? Like what's something that you've done or someone that's done?
So there's so many ways you could do it. It could be something like asking your city to stop using some of the worst systemic pesticides on municipal properties. Like neonicotinoids is a long word for a pesticide that's systemic, which means it stays in the system, it doesn't break down, and it travels through plants and animals. So there's certain pesticides Xerces really encourages people to avoid using. And so you can pass local policies or even statewide policies saying, we're not going to use this pesticide anymore on public property. But another thing that, with selfishly I'll promote is Bee City. That's our whole focus is basically cities that want to become a bee city. They create their own committee and they go to their highest elected officials and they pass a resolution to become a bee city. And they pledge to take these 4 actions that we discussed. And because of doing that, then every year they report to us about their activities. They report how many square feet of habitat they've created, and they tell us about their pesticide reduction actions. And we also help them develop integrated pest management plans for their cities, which is called an IPM plan, which is basically a plan for the city staff to use pesticides as a very last resort. So it gives them all these tools and ideas and procedures like hand pulling weeds or using a weed steamer where you just hit it with hot steam to kill the weeds, all these other options. So by a city becoming a bee city, we tell them, try to follow these basic commitments, but from there they get to make it their own. So whatever the community's into, whatever their strengths or talents are, they then take those commitments and turn them into really neat events. And, it could be a film night or, their like garden designs, they're ideal for their environment. But it's all based on the city agreeing to become a bee city and holding their staff and volunteers to this commitment of helping bees. And so it can be a lens where they look through their grounds and their parks as like pollinator habitat potentially everywhere. So it's a great way that a lot of communities get involved. We're in 46 states now. We have over 300 cities and campuses. So it's a huge community, and cities can help each other and teach each other what works and what doesn't work.
I love the idea of the community, of bringing people together in this kind of common purpose. But as a mom, something that just keeps sticking out to me too, that this is a great way for me to connect with my kids while giving them, this message about sustainability and the importance of pollinators, because it's the planet that they're inheriting, right? And that this is really going to have to become the future. And so like, I like the idea of being able to, talk to my kids about what can we plant together, what kinds of things we can grow together, how we can try and put these things into effect. So it's like community on a broad city town level, but also just community in your own household. You know what I mean? This is a way, I love that. It brings families together too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so many of our affiliates have great activities for kids. They do all sorts of like what's it called, like treasure hunt sort of style activities, looking for different species or like animals or habitat. And there's so many like kid focused activities. Actually, and I should real quick say, the Xerces Society has a really fun kids program called X Kids, where kids get to be be invertebrate superheroes. And there's like an activity book that meets, I think, fourth grade teaching curriculum requirements for science, but it's a free booklet. And if kids complete the program, they get a free wood badge or sticker. And it's a great way for both classes and individuals to kind of like get kids involved in invertebrate conservation and like let them understand the basic principles of basically scientific inquiry. So it's a really fun booklet. We have it available for free on our website, Xerces. If you just Google Xerces X Kids, you can find it. But also a ton of libraries stock it. There's a lot of scout groups that participate in it. So yeah, there's a lot of ways kids can really enjoy it.
I love that so much.
Yeah, me too.
And Joe and I talk about this a lot because we're very tuned into the political sphere of things, and it can get overwhelming. And so we talk about self-care. And like as you're talking, I'm like, this is an act of self-care too, when you really get into that. Like I know for me personally, like I have some indoor plants, and now I'm starting to get into outdoor a little bit. And Joe talks about this too, like her herb garden. Like I know your answer is going to be yes, but can you talk about how, just being out in nature, and like you were talking about the birds, and like I have a bird feeder in my front yard, and I love to sit on my front porch and just look at the birds. Like it's just relaxing, and it can be a great way to decompress also.
Totally. Yeah, I love gardening. I work from home and I try to sneak out for like maybe an hour at lunch and do some weed whacking or pull some of the less good weeds I have, and then get my native plants in the ground each season. I have a ton of perennials, but I'm always adding more. But yeah, it feels so fulfilling because when I moved into my house, it was all grass and a large yard. And it was the first time I'd ever done my own habitat. And so I knew a lot and I had a lot of ideas. But when I first moved in, there weren't a lot of bee species. But over the years, I mean, just a few native plants added, and then like some non-native ones. I had some different sunflower varietals. Some are native, but some are not native. But like lemon sunflower is an excellent pollinator plant. And when I started planting the lemon sunflower, I would notice bees sleeping on the face of the sunflower at night. And so if you go out just early in the morning or late at night, you just see this beautiful large sunflower with all these different species of bees sleeping on it. And it is so rewarding to see. Like I created habitat and they're really enjoying it, and it's like safe and healthy, and like it's such a gift to be able to do that. And it was only that year, I think, like I planted like 6 or 8 sunflowers, and it was enough to really allow bees to kind of move into my yard. And, the nice thing about bees is that you don't have to buy bees to help them. You don't need to invest in hives or anything like that. We just say, if you plant it, they will come. So if you just start like observing, especially in the evening and morning, you'll start noticing bees sleeping potentially on flowers, like the males will sleep sometimes. And then you'll just see them bipping around, and you'll realize that there's some really tiny bees and really big ones, but you'll start seeing just the huge variety that you've helped introduce into your yard. It's really fun.
I love that. I'm sitting out here on my deck, and I have I guess they're called wood bees. Do you?
Carpenter bees, probably.
Carpenter bees,
big.
yeah, real big.
Yeah.
And my dog likes to try and catch them and stuff, and they burrow into my deck. Is that a natural place for them to want to be? Is there somewhere? I mean, you're not my I don't need you to be like a exterminate or not,
No.
but like what? Is that a natural place for them to want to be? Is inside like the wood on my deck, or is there some place I can like steer them?
Yeah.
Go and
you can steer them a little. It depends. So basically, they prefer wood that's kind of rotten a little. So
that's my deck.
Yeah. So one thing you can do is like just get some logs and put them on the other side of the yard.
That's a good idea.
Create a log border, something that looks attractive, or even log seating, something away from your deck. And if there's something that's a little further broken down, a little more rotten, they'll probably go for that. But yeah, I'm definitely not gonna be able to speak to keeping, like eradicating, because they are native. And they're so cute. They're such funny creatures. and some people think they're scary because they can be bullies. They may come down into your face, but they rarely sting. They don't want to sting. They just it's all bark, no bite. And so that's with a lot of native bees, is they cannot or will not sting. Some of them, there's some ground nesting bees that up here are referred to as tickle bees by an elementary school, because there's these gentle ground nesting bees that kids can handle and everything, but they look a little scary, but really they're gentle, fuzzy little friends.
That's interesting, because people do tend to be like, it's a bee, it's they freak out.
Yeah, and most of them have no interest in hurting us.
Right.
I feel like this is I love this conversation for so many reasons, but it's like to remind us to get outside and to just notice all the little things that's just right in your front yard. Like, we share this earth. Let's keep it healthy, right?
Yeah. And that's the cool thing, is you can have this amazing ecosystem diversity in just your own yard. And like, how special is that? Like, it's a lot harder to bring in, cougars and bears and wolves to your yard, but you can bring in this whole like crazy diverse group of invertebrates that have these amazing relationships and behaviors in a very small amount of space.
And just, again, because they're so important, pollinators are so crucially important, and we have to take up this battle, because if we were to go back through time, we wouldn't have to implement all these measures. But I just again was reading that 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat is dependent upon pollinators. I mean, it's amazing that we don't often talk about or realize just how crucial our very existence is to these pollinators.
Yeah, it's such an interdependency that we have, and and luckily there are so many ways we can help. So you don't need to put in a beehive. You just need to plant those native plants and reduce that pesticide usage, and talk to your friends and neighbors and politicians, and you can really make a big difference.
I love that, Laura. Thank you so much. I feel like I have so many more questions, but we'll wrap up. Maybe we could do another one. But yeah, I feel like I definitely want to stay in touch with you, because I think, what we do at Red, Wine, and Blue, like, this is a whole avenue we could just do more education on. And we've talked about that as a staff. So definitely thank you for joining us. I'm excited to start looking up some native plants
Me too.
to introduce into my yard. So I feel inspired.
Me too.
Awesome. So glad
Yeah.
to hear that.
And thank you everybody for joining. And this is live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and it will be saved. YouTube might be the easiest one to rewatch it. So we will have all this information. And have a lovely afternoon, everybody.